Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Follygon, and in this video we are going to be doing a study of this image here by Graphit Studio. I don't know the exact artist at Graphit Studio because they don't list it on their ArtStation, but I am specifically going to be studying the vines that they've created for this image, for this illustration. I think there's a lot of really cool shapes going on here that I would love to attempt to replicate in 3D, so we're gonna try to do that. Over here in ZBrush, I've imported my reference image, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. I love to start pretty much everything with a sphere, but in this case, I don't think it's gonna make too much sense, so I'll probably just use the sphere as a starting point to wrap the vine around. So using something like, I'm thinking maybe a curve brush here. I'm a big fan of the Curve Tube Snap Brush, but maybe there's a couple settings in the stroke menu we can adjust. So in the stroke menu, a couple things that I like to play around with: curve modifier size, and maybe something about there. And that's not exactly what I want. Maybe something a little smaller. So I'm trying to get this kind of tapered effect there. That feels pretty cool to me. And that seems like as good of a place as any to go ahead and get started. So just drawing out a curve, and I'll continue to do that, extending it, wrapping it around the sphere. Just kind of using that as my base shape. What I really like about this form, and I'm just, of course, deleting that sphere underneath, is that there's a lot of, intermingling with these shapes. Check out this one that like comes down and wraps right through here and then kind of creates its own form and then also blends into the tip here. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff happening here. I like to nerd out over this art stuff, but you may not quite to the extreme that I do, but this stuff is really cool. I love looking at these shapes and trying to learn from them as much as I can. I'm a big fan of studying other artists' work and trying to find even just little things that you can take away each day. And that is our goal here, trying to find little things that we can kind of take away. So I want to make sure that I get the main shape correct first. So I'm looking at my reference. It looks like I would probably be benefited by duplicating this. And I'm thinking, you know what, let's just use transparency here while I slide this out of the way. And it kind of splits into two and then they come back together. So I'm gonna try to represent that here just by splitting the shape up, pulling out, trying to use my smooth brush and just narrow it in, make it a little more narrow, something roughly in that direction. That feels pretty good. I'll continue to play with that up top, and then it splits again. So for each of these, I'm creating its own tool, its own 3D object, so that I have more control over what's going on. Otherwise, things get pretty convoluted pretty quickly, and then it's just a mess to deal with. So I'll try to keep things nice and organized here, while still trying to work relatively quickly. All right, so there's this smaller piece kind of pushing up this way, wrapping out here to the side, and then doing something like that. I am a big fan of always rotating around, making sure things are looking good, not just from the front, that's important, but we're 3D artists. We gotta make it look good from every angle. So I'm all about rotating around, making sure things are working from other sides as well. And it looks like this kind of pulls and wraps around this way really strongly. And I don't want to go for perfect accuracy. I think that would take too much time, trying to match the silhouette. Speaking of, we could just align this with our reference image and do exactly that. But I'm more so wanting to capture the overall feel of the design here, the overall shape language, because there's a lot of really cool stuff happening with these forms. But we're just trying to figure out the most basic stuff right now first. Focus a little more as I try to create that. And then it looks like to me that this is maybe tapering off into the distance this way. And we can maybe get some more general curve here from our silhouette, our profile. Starting to wrap that around. Nice, I'm liking that. That's starting to look really cool. I like to use this little function called backface masking a lot to kind of inflate specific areas of my geometry. You could, of course, use the default inflate brush, but Move brush, back face masking, I use it all the time. Extremely powerful tool. You can find it under the brush menu, under auto masking. Really powerful stuff. All right, let's continue just kind of doing some inflating, a couple different brush strokes here and there. Obviously, there's some smaller little pieces that you can see on the surface, but I'm not super concerned with that yet. I need to get the, kind of main shape a little closer, I think, to the overall feel. And then what I'm gonna do is split this back up into its parts. So let's just do a split, group split. Should do very nicely for us. Quick save every once in a while just to make sure. I have mine set to every 15 minutes, but you know how it is. Sometimes that's not enough. And, after splitting things up like that, it's a little nice to just have that air of confidence. You can kind of go a little crazy here. All right, let's start getting some texture on this main piece. I'm just using my clay brush, going a little messy here, trying to break up the surface. The main thing I'm noticing, kind of these flat areas. I mean, this is, a 2D brush that this person is using to create texture. And in terms of shading, there's not a lot indicating the rounded volume. There's some cast shadows going on here from one vine onto the next, but if you look up here, it's relatively flat in terms of shading. And I don't think that's intentional. I don't think they're going for that. I think that's more of a stylistic choice. They're not attempting to make it look, completely flat. That would probably feel a little awkward. So I'll just go on here, some more texture, some more nastiness. Didn't think you'd get a vine sculpting tutorial today, I'm sure, but here we are. All right. Well, hey, this is as much of a tutorial for you as it is for me as I get in and just practice. I feel like, so many people talk about doing the thing and then we rarely do it, right? Here we are actually doing the dang thing. All right, let's do some more kind of carving in, play with this texture a little more. These kind of blend together here. So I'm just going to delete that entirely. Let's just Dynamesh. Don't think I actually deleted hidden on that geometry. All right, more brush, more texture, let's go. Pretty much same thing as last. Going over top, getting some texture. Nothing too crazy. Honestly, at this stage, I prefer being messy. I'm a big fan of being a messy sculptor, so early stages in particular are a great place to exercise your lack of caring and be a little more kind of organic with your forms. All right, so some cool plane breaks happening here in the silhouette that I'm liking. I'm gonna call attention to a few of those, specifically wrapping up through this direction, kind of pulling up. So I'm using a real sharp point here to kind of stylize that feel, sharpen it up, get some nice straight edges, some hard points. I'm a big fan of that myself, being a kind of stylized artist. Create a lot of highly stylized work. All right, last one is this third kind of main tendril, wrapping up through here and actually wrapping up and around to the other side. So I'll just kind of pull that through, pulling up. Let's go with a couple shapes here. I'm gonna play with sharpening up a couple turns here and there as well. And it's not about being super sharp here in the silhouette, although that is often fun. It's about creating this contrast where you have some areas sharp, some other areas rounded, and those forms contrast each other and create a really nice aesthetic. If you do everything really sharp and everything really soft, well then, it just kind of looks, you don't know where to look, I guess, is maybe a better way to say it. I'm just gonna inflate that entire end there. That's looking pretty cool. I think that is heading in a great direction. Now just some quick texture on top, break up the surface. Going back through with the clay brush. Now I'm using my custom brushes, obviously, but you can do this with default brushes exactly the same. Grab, one of the clay buildup or clay tubes brushes and you can play around with it, get a pretty similar result to what I'm doing here. But hey, if you do want to grab my brushes, they are available over on my Gumroad and there is a link down below. Now, I'm working a little fast here and I'm just kind of keeping the same brush stroke size. Not really my recommendation. I recommend switch that up as much as you can. Try Try to get some variation with your brush strokes. Again, during this part, it's totally okay to be messy though. All right, I don't want these to feel like they're going inside of each other. I want there to be a little white space or blank space, whatever you want to call it, between them. And then I want the ends of each one to be kind of merging into this one larger shape. And that is the general vibe that I'm going for here with this quick little study. All right, I like the shapes that I'm getting from these two main pieces, which means I am going to combine them. So I'll just do that real roughly there with the Dynamesh. And I'll go ahead and do that with this third piece as well. So these are my main forms. And you know what? After I look at that, it's still got a couple areas that are just really close together, and I'm afraid that Dynamesh might make that a little more messy than I want to work on. So I will keep those separate. Let's add on some of this color, and then let's add on some of these tertiary pieces. There's a lot of really cool things going on there, and I think that the color will help sell the overall vibe of what we're going for. So for the color, there are a couple things that we can do here. I'm thinking of just grabbing maybe my standard brush with the spray stroke or even color spray to get some more variation. And let's just grab ourselves a big old messy alpha here. Additionally, using a low RGB intensity is a better route to go, in my opinion. So I'm just trying to get a couple areas of texture. I'm gonna start with this lighter value and just go over top of this pretty much everywhere. Now we don't wanna hand paint too many highlights or shadows. I'm just trying to kind of break up the texture here. If you do wanna go that route, I think that's really fun. In my opinion, I'm not a huge fan of hand painting too many shadows or too many highlights. I feel that it starts to look a little silly, and if you try to render that later with some actual lights, then things kind of work against each other. You have your hand-painted lights and shadows, and then you also have your physical lights, and things start to feel really weird and don't really, like I said, work together super well. So instead, what I'll do is just kind of break up the texture a little more here, and then we'll continue on. Cool, that should be fine for the resolution that we're working at. Notice we don't have, something incredibly dense. It's pretty low res in terms of ZBrush at least. So let's continue on with a little more sculpting. All right, now to add on these little pieces, I see that there is one right up here. And for these, well, that's a little odd. I don't want that. Let's try to reset that brush. That's a little closer. So for these, I'm just going to place them on the surface really quick in a few different spots that I'm noticing in our reference image, and then I'll go ahead and start manipulating them a little further. I wouldn't be incredibly specific with these. If you're going for 1-to-1, that's really cool, but I'm just trying to get the vibe down. All right, so I have, 5 different pieces here that are gonna be really simple and easy to manipulate. I have created them as just separate polygroups. They're all in the same subtool. And now all I need to do is go in and manipulate and adjust a few of those. And I'm actually sculpting this very similarly to how I would sculpt hair. If anybody has ever seen some of my hair sculpting info that I like to share. And that is by using just a few stray strands of hair to add visual interest to the silhouette, kind of pull you into a few specific areas, while at the same time, let's see if we can fix our color there. What's going on? There we go. Not sure what was wrong with the color. But our objective here is to just have a few little pops of silhouette break. Put this everywhere and it feels, very awkward. Don't put this in enough spaces and it feels like, what is that? You just got one little piece there hanging out. I also really like to have them kind of weave in and out of the primary form. Creates this really nice effect to where it feels very cohesive with the whole. The main part of this though is kind of breaking up our silhouette in some form or fashion and trying to add as much variation as we can to our surface. All right, I really like that. I'm really enjoying that actually a lot. I want to do a couple more of those, and so I will. So I just draw on a new curve like this. I control tab it with either my transpose line or 3D gizmo. For some reason, oh, there we go. It was already masked, I'm dumb. So what I like to do, just draw it on the same subtool, mask it off, and manipulate it. Keep it all low poly. Don't worry about subdividing. Don't worry about dynameshing. Just get it nice and simple. Something like relatively what I have here. If you want to use dynamic subdivs, that's D on your keyboard to get a previs of that smoothing. Just be careful not to use those with actual subdivs, or you're going to have a ton of lag, and you don't want that. I'll do one more right up top here on the front, and just have that kind of break the surface slightly. All right, so we have a lot of cool stuff going on here in the silhouette now, a lot of silhouette breaking. From the front view, much more visually interesting than the side, so if we want to go through and break that up and try to split up the silhouette even more, I think that would be a valuable use of our time. I'll maybe do like the smallest amount of that right there. But for the most part, this is kind of what I'm looking for my shape. I'm enjoying that a lot. So let's add in some more geometry and start getting this into a finished, polished vibe. So I'm using Z Remesher with keep groups, and it looks like it's kind of being a little funky with my geometry. That should be fine. All right, let's do some projecting. If you guys don't know how to do this, and by this I mean Z Remesh and project, I have a great video for you. I'll throw a link to it down below if you guys want to learn more. And this is definitely something that everybody should have in their back pocket in terms of a process. It's something I use on pretty much everything, so very important process. All right, that is already Z Remeshed, and these already have some decent topology as well. So it was really just that main chunk. And now what I'm gonna do is use that exact same texture and idea with the spray stroke, but this time I'm not gonna use paint. I am going to use Z Subtract with that standard brush. So let's just do a quick test. Whoa, way too strong. All right, let's lower that maybe around 10 or so, around 10-ish, my favorite time to play tennis. And that starts to feel pretty good. Okay, let's start with that. And I'm gonna be gentle here with my brush strokes. I don't wanna go too hard, and I don't want it to get too dense, because then it starts to lose that feel. I'm wondering here. All right, I turned off the spray alpha, or not alpha, but the spray stroke, and I'm just gonna freehand some of this alpha and an attempt to get this overall directionality. I want this to follow the flow, and with that spray stroke, it was starting to twist some of the texture a little more than I wanted. This starts to feel a lot closer to more so what I'm looking for here. So I'm going to put this just about everywhere, but be a little selective with how strong it is in a few areas, how much of it I put in others, and go from there. So we'll come back here after I do a little more of this. Try not to leave any surface unturned or devoid of texture, but in most of these areas I'm being a little more gentle. Now, a lot of our clay brushstroke texture from earlier is coming through, which is really nice, as that helps to kind of lead some of that secondary form. I consider this, what we're kind of adding on top here, more just little tertiary details. A lot of the time I see people kind of rush ahead to this type of thing. It's, you know, in my opinion, it can, you know, sometimes be fun, but in my opinion, the primary forms are where the real fun is happening. That's where all the hard work is, and that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy the most. Being a stylized artist, you know, a lot of the stuff that I create is pretty much all primary form. And in my opinion, breaking up the silhouette, creating some cool shapes like that, that's what I'm interested in, at least. This texture stuff, it's cool, but it's a little repetitive. It can get, you know, kind of boring quick. Okay, I have successfully gone through and added texture to just about every portion of our surface. I would like to play with the shape here at the end slightly, kind of getting some of that turn back. Always, never, you know, don't be afraid to go back and adjust your primary form if you need to. Especially here towards the end, you feel like you maybe get really attached to some stuff, but never too late to go back. All right, something roughly like that. I kind of want to adjust my shape even more, so let's go into T-pose or transpose master. This is a great little tool to just quickly combine some stuff and make some quick adjustments. Again, not going for one-to-one accuracy in terms of the silhouette. As you can see, my angle here is very different, but the overall kind of feel, the overall aesthetic is very similar. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, and I think so far we've achieved it, but I think there's a couple extra little things we can do here at the end to push on that even further. I am applying the tiniest amount of surface noise here to break up my surface, as it's just a little too clean for my liking for what we're going for here. So let's just go ahead and paste and click on OK and apply to mesh. Again, it's not really creating a ton of breakup, but it's just enough to get rid of those little areas that are nice and smooth. We don't want any of that going on here. All right, I'll maybe add on some very small finishing touches, but for the most part, I am pretty happy with the result that we have here. So let's just go through, I don't know where my subdivs went there, but let's reconstruct them and make just the smallest amount of changes here and there. Okay, well, I pretty much am done with the sculpting portion of this. I really like the way that it turned out for just, a quick little study here of some art. I think we should go ahead and render this over in Blender, so I'll go ahead and set that up while I'm talking here, or past me will have set it up and rendered the vine. But hey, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, maybe learned something new along the way. If you guys want to see some more of these in the future, leave a comment down below and let me know. If you're interested in learning more about digital sculpting, check out my Patreon and Gumroad, links down below, where you can find some awesome tutorials, find things like my custom brushes that I was using here in this video, and join the Follygon Discord. Check them out, all the links are down below in the description. And with that, you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.